Okay. So you got AOC in Montgomery. You got thousands marching in Selma. You've got speeches about black voices being erased, hashtags, of course, signs, historic symbolism. But underneath all that emotion, this entire argument comes down to one uncomfortable question. At what point does representation stop meaning fairness and start meaning political engineering? Because that's the part nobody wants to explain carefully.
What I've been telling everybody is when the flare goes up, we pull up.
Hello.
And that's what our assignment is for the next day, week, month, year. We just have to show up.
I'm here in Montgomery, Alabama with members of Congress and with busloads of Americans who are here to fight for fair representation. And one of them is none other than
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez,
the original AOC. So why was it important for you to be here in Montgomery?
Well, I think one of the reasons why it's important for me to be here is because it's important for every American to be here.
Yeah.
In this moment, we have to stand with one another. We are not divided by state. We're not divided by where we're from, but we're united by our citizenship. And we cannot allow the rights of people here in Alabama and across the country to go eviscerated by the Voting Rights Act. And we can't take it sitting down, and we can't look the other way. And when the call goes out, we pull up, and we're here to support the leaders on the ground, and a way will be made out of no way.
Because we're not going back.
We're not going back.
Notice how quickly the language jumps from Alabama to America. That's strategic, because if this conversation stays local, people start asking local questions. How many districts? What percentage? What did the court actually say? But once you wrap it in civil rights imagery, now disagreeing feels more emotional instead of analytical. And politicians love emotional math, because emotional math, it never has to add up. Then the visual, it just gets even stronger. Look at this. What? See, this is where the media gets slick, because visually, this looks undeniable. Not bridges. Crowds, sunlight, civil rights energy, right? It feels morally correct before anybody even explains the case. That's modern politics now. Half the battle is winning the movie trailer version of the argument. And Democrats are incredible at that, right? They know how to package an issue emotionally before anybody reads one page of the ruling. Because once people actually slow down and read the ruling, it becomes a way more complicated conversation than good people versus bad people. Then, my guy Mike Johnson, he comes sounding like the guy, ruining everybody's inspirational speech with paperwork.
So what is your message to black Americans, black voters, about this redistricting?
The Supreme Court issued a long-awaited opinion, and I think it was long overdue, and they stated the obvious, that drawing congressional lines must be fair. You cannot draw lines on the basis of race, and that's what was done in Louisiana. So they declared it to be an unconstitutional gerrymander, and it was. This brings back fairness and certainty to the system, and I think a lot of states are looking to make sure that their maps are not unconstitutional like Louisiana's was.
Okay, we have another big legal issue of... So what is your message?
See, this is the part the left hates hearing. The Supreme Court did not say black voters, or black people can't vote, rather. They didn't remove black districts from existence, and they didn't ban representation. The argument was about whether maps were being drawn primarily around race itself. That's a completely different argument. But online, everything gets compressed into they're attacking black voters every single time. That's why people are exhausted now. Every political disagreement gets escalated straight to civilizational emergency mode immediately. No nuance, no patience, just sirens. And then J.D. Vance came in and flipped this whole thing with one question.
President Trump's agenda is so popular. Why do Republicans need to add additional seats to the map?
Well, first of all, Kristen, you have to ask yourself, why have Democrats gerrymandered their states aggressively over the past 10 to 20 years? If you look, for example, at the popular vote in a lot of these states, and Massachusetts, where 32% of the residents of Massachusetts voted for Republicans, 0 Republican federal representatives. So we're not trying to sort of, all we're doing, frankly, is trying to make the situation a little bit more fair on a national scale. The Democrats have gerrymandered their states really aggressively. We think there are opportunities to push back against that, and that's really all we're doing.
President Trump's agenda.
That's why Democrats got uncomfortable with this debate. Because the second somebody brings up Massachusetts or Illinois or New York, now this stops being a morality play and turns into a strategy discussion. And suddenly, the people screaming fair maps. They got to explain why certain blue states look like monopoly boards designed by exhausted caffeine addicts. That's the problem with modern political outrage, though. Everybody wants audits for the other team. Nobody wants a flashlight pointed, on their own garage. But then the conversation gets completely complicated again. Because this next clip is exactly why the issue keeps surviving politically.
Mr. Josiah Hardy.
Yes, sir.
You don't have to answer this, but how old are you?
16 years old.
I commend you for coming here today and having the courage to testify before this committee.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good afternoon, chairs and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Josiah Hardy. I'm a sophomore at LSU Laboratory School. I'm the founder and director of an initiative I created, Project 2028, that promotes civic education and voting literacy among teens. And I also come to you today as a 16-year-old in Louisiana. I come to you as a 16-year-old who does not want to stay in Louisiana because of bills like 116, 121, and 130. These have diluted the voice of African Americans and doesn't allow us to see us in Congress. As an African American myself, I want to hold political offices in the future, but I cannot do so if my voice is diluted in a community that does not like me. I cannot do so in a community that does not want to see me thrive or see my people thrive. So I move away in hopes to have my voice heard and have my voice communicated and effectively enough so I can become the young black man that I need to be in the competitive society that it is. I am in favor of Senate Bill 407 because it allows my people to have the voice that we haven't had in many years. The fact that we are still having to sit here in 2026 and fight for our right to vote and our right to have voices in Congress is a problem. It's a problem that we all face and we all need to wake up to in Louisiana. And if you want to plan for the future, then you need to allow the future to be a part of your planning. Thank you.
See, this is where Republicans mess up if they get lazy. Because whether you agree with them or not, that young man is speaking from his perspective, real fear. And if your response to every concern is just cry harder, you lose people that were actually willing to listen. That's why Democrats stay competitive even when people get frustrated with them, because they understand emotional language, identity language, historical language. Republicans just usually argue facts. Democrats argue atmosphere. And atmosphere wins way more elections than people want to admit. But then Carol Swan, she takes this conversation somewhere neither party really likes leaving it.
In 1993, Shaw v. Reno in North Carolina, where they had a snake-like district that followed the interstate, I-85, and that was declared unconstitutional. And what it did was connect all the black communities running through several cities. That was struck down because it was an unconstitutional racial gerrymander. And for people that are, this hue and cry as if the court did something unusual in Louisiana, no, they followed that precedent. But in the Louisiana case, they were trying, I believe, to create a second black majority district. And when you create those black majority districts, you don't necessarily ensure the election of a minority representative. Most of the time it will be. Steve Cohen represented Memphis ever since he was elected in 2007.
You're saying that the progressives don't really care because as long as they have a representative in there that is voting with them as part of the Democratic gang, the actual conditions of the black voters in the district become irrelevant. As long as they can sustain their guy in power, in addition to normal gerrymandering, they get these specially designated black districts, which have given them probably more seats than they would otherwise have had, now going back for, what, 60 or 70 years?
Well, that's the deeper layer. Our argument isn't just about districts, it's about incentives. If political power depends on keeping racial tension permanently active, then solving the tension becomes bad for business. And that's the part we starting to notice, y'all. Not because they suddenly, people are suddenly becoming Republicans, or some people, not because they switch teams overnight, none of that. It's because people can feel when they're being emotionally managed. This has been a whole thing for the last couple of weeks. And that feeling is growing fast in this country. I'm trying to tell y'all, especially with young voters, especially, I already said it, with the young voters. Because eventually people start asking, wait, what are y'all actually trying to improve my life or preserve the argument itself? Because those are two completely different missions. You know what changed in America? If I'm being honest, people stopped reacting to political messaging the way that they used to. That's the real story behind this, underneath this redistricting fight. 10 years ago, if you attached enough historical imagery to an issue, most people would emotionally lock in before the details even arrive. Bridge marches, civil rights language, black voter suppression, historic parallels. And to be clear, history should matter. America's racial history is real. Nobody serious denies that. But what's happening now is that Americans are starting to separate historical pain from modern political strategy. And that shift is making a lot of organizers nervous. Because once people, begin asking, okay, specifically, what are you asking for? Conversation obviously becomes harder to emotionally control. Now people want to see the districts. Now they want to read the rulings. Now they want to compare the states. Now people want to know why fairness only gets discussed in certain directions. That's new. And honesty. I said honesty. Honestly, that's healthier. Because, democracy, it gets dangerous when symbolism becomes too powerful. When imagery becomes stronger than scrutiny, when questioning something immediately gets treated like betrayal. That's when politics slowly stop being about citizens and starts becoming theater management. And I think a lot of Black Americans are quietly arriving at this place mentally, where they're saying, I still care about representation, but also don't want to be emotionally summoned into every political fight automatically anymore. That's a huge shift. Not because people suddenly became right-wing overnight, not because they abandoned history, not because racism magically disappeared, but because people are exhausted from being psychologically drafted into every national argument before they even fully understand the details. And the internet accelerated that exhaustion. Yeah, everybody can pause clips, read rulings, compare hypocrisy in real time, pull voting maps up instantly, listen to multiple perspectives instantly. And that changes everything. Because political messaging used to move one direction, from institutions to the people. Now, the people talk back immediately, and the institutions are struggling with that loss of control. That's why this redistricting conversation feels bigger than maps. It's really about whether Americans still respond automatically to emotional political framing, and whether they've entered a new era where everybody gets questioned now. And honestly, I think that era has already started. So if you made it to the end of this video, I want you to write examination. Yeah, we're going to say it like they did on a SpongeBob episode. Examination. Y'all be safe. Go check on somebody today. You can quite literally be saving their life. Peace.